Hey,
Good afternoon.
hello everyone. Welcome to today's WinMBNA webinar. Before we get started, I'd just like to remind you to please go ahead and mute your microphone so that we can limit our background noise. Throughout today's presentation, feel free to type your questions or comments into the chat, and I will be monitoring those throughout. However, we will hold those questions to review together at the end of the presentation. And with that, I will turn things over to Christine, our WinMBNA president.
Well, because our pictures are.
Christine, I think you're muted.
All right, there we go. Thanks, Kaylee. And hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Today's webinar features Kelley Hughes, a legal professional with 40 plus years of experience, who's an active member of the National Association for Legal Support Professionals and Toastmasters International. As a member of Toastmasters, she has developed an excellent public speaking and leadership skills. Kelley is a dynamic and engaging speaker who has presented at national conferences on various legal topics and professional development, using her expertise to provide informative and impactful presentations. Kelley has a passion for sharing her knowledge to help others achieve their goals both personally and professionally. Kelley's presentation will give you tried and tested secrets to getting past fear, being able to speak with confidence, and engaging an audience of one or many. Welcome, Kelley.
Thank you so much. You've given me such a good bio introduction. You've kind of gone through some of the things that I was going to say right away. Before I get started, I see most of you have your cameras on. If you could unmute and have your cameras on if you can, I would just love to ask you, by maybe show of hands, how many of you have pain points with giving a presentation?
At what point?
Pain points.
Oh,
Pain points. It's difficult to give a presentation. Maybe you're afraid, you get nervous, you get anxious. Believe it or not, I do too, even after years of practice. We're going to talk about that today. I was really intrigued, and I'm going to start my PowerPoint. Let me share that. Okay. I was really intrigued to get to talk to you today. I went to your website and looked at what Monument Builders of North America is about. I don't know that I'm an expert, but you have a good website, and I got to read through a lot of that. It reminded me of something that I have been watching for 2 years. There is a YouTuber, and his name is, his YouTube name is Millennial Stone Cleaner. There we go. This guy goes with permission, of course, into cemeteries and sometimes from the families, and restores monuments that have cracked, fallen over, can no longer be read, or maybe buried under grass and dirt. And he lovingly restores them. And he talks about you have to use specific materials. You can't just clean a headstone with anything. And he often tries to find who this person was and who their family was and more information about them. So it's fascinating to me. And it really drives home to me how important memorials and headstones are. It's a way for us to memorialize our loved ones, but we also hope that they're never forgotten. So what monument builders do is so important to society. I'm going to talk to you a lot about Toastmasters today because that's my frame of reference for what I like to do in public speaking. So I guess the first thing you'd ask is, what is Toastmasters? A little bit about me. I've been a Toastmaster for 10 years, and I am working on the highest level, which is called a distinguished Toastmaster. You have a lot you have to do to get to that point. So I'm still working on it. What I loved about Toastmasters in the last couple of years, and the only good thing to come out of the pandemic, was we have moved to Zoom. So you can visit any club that's an open club. Some are corporate clubs where it's only people within the industry that they're in that can go to that club. But open clubs you can visit anywhere in the world, and we are worldwide. When the pandemic happened and we went to Zoom, I found clubs in Ireland and the UK and South Africa and just all over the world and all over the United States that I could join and be a part of their meeting. A lot of the ones in India and South Africa, they are practicing their English and their enunciations as well as practicing speeches. So it's very, very interesting. When you talk about Toastmasters, it is a nonprofit organization that is put together to help people with public speaking and leadership skills. It's a really safe setting to practice. It doesn't cost a lot. It's $60 every 6 months, which we meet every week. So it's not very much to be a Toastmaster. And I'm not giving you an ad for Toastmasters per se. I just want to explain something about Toastmasters. And part of that is because I want to tell you the story of someone that Toastmasters made a difference in her life. But in order to tell you more about Denise, I have to tell you a little bit about Toastmasters and about the meetings. Now, most of the meetings, except for the ones that are in other countries, they tend to be on Saturdays and run for a couple hours. Most of our meetings are 1-hour meetings. And we have a sergeant at arms. It's a very important part of it. They are voted on. They're part of the board. And they're the person that opens the meeting, gives the membership, word I'm looking for. They give our mission statement. Sorry, sometimes you go blank. They give our mission statement and they introduce the Toastmaster. The Toastmaster is a different person every week. And all these roles I'm going to tell you about are different people every week. The Toastmaster is the host of the first half of the meeting, and they will introduce a timer. One important thing about giving a presentation is following what time limits you have. You want to make sure you don't go over 20 minutes if that's what you're given, or 30 minutes or 50 minutes. So we have timers. Most of our speeches are 4 to 6 minutes or 5 to 7. And with the example of a 4 to 6 minute speech, we have backgrounds now, but back in the day we had cards. And we had a green card at 4 minutes when you've reached your time requirement. We had a yellow card at 5.5 minutes when you've got 30 seconds left. And then at 6 minutes, you would get a red card. And that would tell you have 30 minutes to wrap it up and be eligible to be voted on, because we do vote on the best speaker in some of these other roles. The next person that's introduced is the word master. This is a great way that we build our vocabulary. I'm going to give you a word like they do, a word of the day, which is fruition. This is not a hard word. Most of the words we get are hard words. And I want you to pay attention and see if I use this, which I hope I will, during the speech. What they will tell you is that it's a noun. They will give you the definition, a point at which a plan or project is realized. And then they will give you the word in a sentence. The plans have come to fruition sooner than expected. So those are introduced at the beginning. Then the Toastmaster will introduce the theme of the day. It's really fun to be Toastmaster because you get to pick the theme of the day. One of my favorite ones that I've ever done, I emailed everybody that had a role and I said, tell me your favorite song from the summer. What makes you think it's summertime? It was around June. And each time that person got up to speak, I had recorded the music and would give them that music as their intro. And then they might talk about why that song was so important to them in the summertime. For a lot of people, I had several people that it was Fresh Prince, Summertime, that song. For other people, it was something from Creedence Clearwater Revival, which takes you back a few years. It didn't matter what the song was. It was good for them to talk about why that song meant something to them, and it made for a really fun meeting. The next thing is the Toastmaster will introduce the speakers. Now, I need to be real clear. No one is ever called upon to speak in Toastmasters. You volunteer. And we usually have two speakers. They'll introduce them and tell what their title of their presentation is. And then after that, we have what we call table topics, which to me is one of the most fun things to do in Toastmasters. You have 1 to 2 minutes to answer a question, and you volunteer. You do not know the question in advance, but it's usually something that you can answer off the cuff. And it's trying to teach you impromptu speaking. So your question might be my first question. The first one I got was, tell us about a vacation you loved. Now, we're to speak 1 to 2 minutes, and you wouldn't think that's very hard. And I had just come back from my 25th wedding anniversary trip to Hawaii, so I knew this was going to be easy for me. Well, guess what? I got in my head. I was rambling. I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I wasn't used to speaking impromptu. And I stopped at 57 seconds. I just couldn't wait. I had to be done. And I missed it by 3 seconds. But it goes to show you have to get used to these things in order to be able to do them well. The next person, the Toastmaster will turn the meeting over to the second half, which is evaluations. And we have a general evaluator. And the first thing they introduce are the speech evaluators. This is a great way to get immediate feedback on your speech. And these people, they get up, they have 2 to 3 minutes, and they usually use something we call the CRE method. And that's commendations, recommendations, and encouragement. It's a very positive, safe setting to do something that a lot of people find terrifying. The next person that plays a role is the timer again. They will give their time report for the speakers, the table topics, and the speech evaluators. And as long as people have come in within their time limit, we vote on who had the best answer or the best speech. The next person is the word master, who will stand up and tell how many times fruition was used and who used it. The next person is our grammarian. This role is pretty easy. They're looking for excellent uses of the English language. They do correct people when they do something that is grammatically incorrect. My biggest problem, and if I do it, I'm going to call myself on it during the speech, which you would never do. My biggest problem is I'm gonna and I wanna, instead of I'm going to and I want to. It's easy to say what we typically say in speech, but a professional speaker is going to say, I'm going to and I want to. That's one of the corrections I get from the grammarian all the time. And what I want you to do today, if you've got a pen and a piece of paper, if you hear me say I wanna or I'm gonna, would you please make a tick mark? I'd like to know at the end how many times I do that. The I counter is the next person. The I counter looks for filler words. That's and in the use of several sentences, run-on sentences. So, you know, like. I went to a conference not too long ago, and the speaker used like so many times that I ended up wanting to leave the room. It just hurt my ears. Their speech was something like this. Well, I went and met with this person, and like, they were not really receptive to everything that I was like trying to tell them. that can be very annoying. And if you're in Toastmasters, it's something we're definitely going to call out. So you have the eye counter, and they stand up and give their report. And they do a great job in keeping us on track. A lot of times they'll just say, Kelley, you used so 5 times. You had some other ones, but you used so a lot. So I will ask you, there's my so. While I'm speaking, if you hear a filler word, tick that off for me. I'd love to hear what I come up with at the end. So now I want to tell you about Denise. Denise, I used to work at Sarah Cannon Research Center in Nashville, Tennessee. I worked in the legal department. Denise was a clinical research analyst, and she had the job of giving presentations about clinical research. The problem is, Denise was terrified. It was her greatest fear. She had so much trouble, she would put the presentation together and then give it to someone else to give. She had moved up through the ranks and she was about to be promoted to a manager position. And her manager said, you need to attend Toastmasters. We can't allow you to have other people do your presentations anymore. And those presentations, you could take one clinical trial and have to present in front of the hospital, in front of the doctors, in front of the sponsors of the clinical trial. You could have 5 or 6 speeches that you need to give regarding that one chunk of material, and she wasn't able to do it. She came to a meeting. The good thing about Sarah Cannon is so many people need to give presentations there because they're all analysts and doing research, that they provided a corporate club, a closed club for only Sarah Cannon employees. It was a benefit. They paid for it. She showed up at a meeting and I noticed her. She sat in the back. She didn't say anything. She kind of was looking down most of the time. She didn't make eye contact. And as soon as the meeting was over, she was gone. I went back the next time and made sure I got a chance to meet her and ask her, why are you coming to Toastmasters? What do you hope to gain? Which is what I usually ask new people. And she told me her story. She said, if I don't get a handle on this fear, I might lose my job. They won't let me just give my presentations to anyone else anymore. I told her, I said, I'll be your mentor. We can work on this together. You can do this, Denise. She kept coming back, but she kept sitting at the back, and she was still out the door as soon as the meeting was over. Well, she came to me and she said, they're asking me what I'm doing in Toastmasters and when I'll be able to present. And I told her, we need to get you a small role and just get you started. You know that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One small bite at a time. So Denise agreed to be the timer. That's an easy role. You stand up at the beginning and you have a script you can read from. Hi, my name's Denise. I'm the timer today. You'll need to look for me when you're speaking for the red card, for the green card, the yellow card, and the red card. And then at the end, she would give the report on each person. Denise stood up. She had a piece of paper with that information on it, that script. And I've never seen anybody shake and have their voice kind of break. And she put it up over her face. And I mean to tell you, it wasn't just the paper shaking. Her whole body was shaking. One thing I didn't tell you about Toastmasters is when you finish speaking, we all applaud everybody that speaks. There is an immediate positive feedback. We all knew how, just from the performance, how scared she was. And we all clapped like crazy when she got done. She didn't get to run out the door that time because everybody wanted to say, hey, Denise, great job. You did a great job. I know you were scared, but it's going to get easier. There I am, catching myself. Now, you don't ever do that in a speech, but if I'm going to tell you some of the things you can work on, I'll let you know some of the ones I need to work on. To make a long story short, Denise kept coming. She kept doing the little roles. And then one day she stood up and volunteered for table topics. And she met her requirement the first time, unlike me. Over time, she got more and more confidence. Practice gives you confidence. And after a while, she wasn't shaking anymore. She gave her first speech. And your first speech is called an icebreaker. It is an introduction to you. It's a story you know. It's not hard to do 4 to 6 minutes on your life. She did her first speech, and you want to hear thunderous applause? It was amazing. I think there were cat calls and woos and everything else when she finished. We were so proud of her. And unbelievably, I left Sarah Cannon about 2 years later. By that time, that sergeant in arms I talked about, that was Denise. Denise opened every meeting, told the mission statement, introduced the Toastmaster, and was the face of the beginning of the meeting for guests. It was incredible. Of all the things I've ever done in Toastmasters or the other associations I've been in, mentoring her and seeing her grow is at the top of my list of achievements. It really is. So I want to stop for a second. I'm going to stop sharing. And I would like to do a little poll that was set up in advance. I think who's handling the poll for me? Kaylee? Can you
Yes.
start that poll, please?
Yes, I am clicking launch now. Does
Okay,
everybody see that?
just pick one of those answers and we'll be able to see as you pick what you're comfortable with. If you're terrified, and it may not be that we have somebody that's terrified in our midst, but I think we'll have some different answers. Let's see. There are 24 of us in the room, so I'll just give you just a second. So looking at the answers, there are some people who are not comfortable. They've done it, they got through it, but they didn't really care for it. And we have one person who is a good public speaker and doesn't have any problems getting up in front of an audience. Me, honestly, I'm in that somewhat comfortable, but I still get nervous. I have work that I can continue to do to be a better speaker. So I'm going to end that poll and share the results, so you can see how everybody answered. Well, it's good we don't have anybody who's terrified, but I'm still going to talk about fear today because it is important. I'm going to share my screen again. Now, let's talk about fear. When we get in a situation where we feel fear, what automatically clicks in is that flight or fight mode. In 1/10 of a second, our brain goes into action. This is fearful. This is dangerous. What do I do? And then you have a second assessment about 1/10 of a second later, whether you're safe or not. This keeps us alive. Fear is absolutely normal. People have different things that fight or flight comes up, and you should run, and you do. that it saves lives having that fight or flight mentality and knowing when we need to get away from something. However, it's often something with public speaking that's built on negative past experiences. The people that are terrified often tell me that when they were young, they got in front of an audience and they were laughed at. They were humiliated. Or they walked up to a bunch of friends and said something and they all looked at them like they had a third eye. Or they walked up and nobody paid them attention. These negative past experiences can lead to that fear. And it's something that you can overcome with what therapists call exposure therapy. Again, with the elephant, a little bite at a time. With fear, you need to work through things and practice and use repetition to get yourself to the point where you're not so fearful. I think everybody has some anxiety and fear when they get up to speak in front of an audience, whether it's one or many. Some people that have these negative experiences have trouble communicating at work, with their spouse, with the people they know, because they've had that negative past experience. So the exposure therapy really works to help them over time become more confident in what they're able to say. Now I'm going to give you a few secrets. You want to involve your audience and you want to get them engaged from the start. That's part of the reason I asked you a question right off the bat. I want to know where you're at and what you expect from this speaking engagement. I didn't get to ask a lot of questions, but I did get hands on who has some fear in public speaking. You want to stop and ask questions periodically. And if you're giving a PowerPoint, use Zoom tools. You have the ability to do a poll. You have the ability to use reaction buttons and let people raise their hands or clap or put a heart when they like something you've said. And you can encourage that. And then you have the chat feature, which for me, I like the questions to go in the chat and for me to answer at the end, because I'm always worried about making my time limit. That's something I have to work on. So you can use the chat for that. And then more secrets. Know your audience. I had a bit of a issue with anxiety today because I don't know you. All of my public speaking engagements so far have been at conferences where I was a member. I knew people in the audience. I had friends in the audience. It made it a little easier. But what I did do is go to the website, read as much as I could from your website to understand who you are as retailers and the people that you are trying to protect from people that are fly by night and may not do a good job on the monuments that people are purchasing. So that's the first thing, know your audience. And then I suggest you find your passion. If you've got something you're talking about and you are excited and interested and passionate about it, that is something that spreads. People pull out of that and become more passionate with you because they can see how excited you are about what you have to say. Something very, very important is tell a story. I told you about Denise, and Denise is a true story. And I'm sure in your lives, however long you've been on this planet, you have stories. You have stories about work. You have stories about your home and your life and who you love and what you're passionate about. I'm passionate about records. I have a jazz collection. I'm an avid audiophile. That's something I'm passionate about, and I could give a speech on that off the cuff, no problem. Tell a story. When you tell something, you get people engaged. They want to know more. They want to hear about this story. And I would suggest that you go, I forgot we need to talk about elevator pitches. Elevator pitches, and I do say pitches plural because I have more than one. I have a pitch that I give about my association for legal professionals. I have a pitch that I give about Toastmasters if somebody asks me a question. I have a personal pitch just about myself if somebody asks me a question. And then I have one work related. And I probably have more that I'm not even thinking about. What you want to do with an elevator pitch so you get comfortable is you want to think of 3 things that you want to tell somebody. You have like 30 to 60 seconds in an elevator pitch. It's not long. You don't want to bore somebody, or not bore them, but maybe give them so much information that they're like, okay, I don't need to know much more about her. You want to connect with them with just 2 or 3 things. For me, like when I talk about myself personally, I'm married, been married 35 years. I have 2 grown children and a grandson that I treasure that lives, unfortunately, in California, a long way from Tennessee. That's my personal pitch. And then somebody may ask me more questions. When I talk about Toastmasters, I have 3 things. I talk about public speaking skills, leadership skills, and the community, because the community in Toastmasters is one of the biggest parts of why I am still there. And I suggest with your elevator pitch, get in your mirror. Think about those 3 things. It's really, really important that you don't memorize. You don't ever want to memorize something because then you don't come off as authentic. You want to have just 3 things you can think of. And this is your personal story, whether it's about work or personal life or the associations you belong to, the community service you do, your church, whatever it is that you want to talk about. I'm sure you can think of 3 points, but get in front of the elevator. The mirror. It's an elevator pitch. Get in front of the mirror and look at yourself directly in the eyes and give that elevator pitch. Think about a question someone might ask you. It's really good to think about a question you've already been asked. This will help you with impromptu speaking. The more you do it, the better you get. And elevator pitches are really important because you draw people in and then they want to know more. I'm going to make a suggestion that you go to YouTube and watch some TED Talks. These things go viral and millions of people watch them. And there's a reason. 9 times out of 10, it's a story. Somebody's story. It may be about their battle with cancer. It may be about their ADD. It may be about something else. But they relate their personal stories to give you a reason to engage with them. If you watch some TED Talks, you're going to see some fantastic public speakers that you can learn from. The next thing is putting your speech together. Now, I'm going to admit, I don't do it the way they say you should do it. What they say is that you should break down an outline, have a subject, and then know what you're going to say about that subject. Do research and whatever you need to do. I looked at 17 books in different things to talk about elevator pitches and to talk about public speaking secrets. I've probably put 60 hours into this presentation because I want it to be great and I want you to get something from it. So when you're putting your speech together, you've got some research to do. And I am really glad for word processing. I'm going to tell my age now. I'll be 60 in 2 weeks. When I was in college, I would take a piece of paper and put a tape on it. I'd write down an idea and put it on my wall. And then I'd write down another idea and put it on my wall. And I'd have 20 ideas on my wall for a speech. And then I'd look and I'd go, okay, that's 1. That's 2. Might have one over here. That's 3. And I'd give them in order so then I could type them up on a typewriter. Yes, I'm that old. Now I put just bullet points on my word processor, my Word, and then I write my whole speech. You're not supposed to do that, but I write out my whole speech so I can flesh it out, so I can put the things in it that I want to, so I can do the research and get facts and figures right. And so that's the first thing, putting together your speech. Now you'll notice I've used a PowerPoint today, and I've used different things. Transitions are how the slides come in. I like to use bullet points, and I use them wisely. I like them to come in when I'm talking about it, because if you put your whole speech on a PowerPoint and you read from it, you're no longer a speaker, you're a reader. And we can all read. There's nothing that I think is a bigger pet peeve for me than people that put everything on the PowerPoint. Now, you have situations where you need to put facts and figures and charts, and that's something you may have to read. If you have 20 different percentages for something you're talking about, you're not going to remember all that. And you may have to look at your script and look at your PowerPoint. But what you don't want to do is read, because they don't hear you anymore. Every time you turn around to look at that PowerPoint, and for somebody like me, I've already read your PowerPoint because I speed read. I've already read through it. I'm bored now. I'm waiting for you to finish reading, and that's never good. When we talk about the transitions and animations, transitions brings your next slide up. Animations brings your next thought up or your picture in. You can use those tools so wisely and really make your PowerPoint something that everybody will like to see. I've used a bunch of them today. I usually do not use that many transitions and that many animations, but I wanted to give you an idea of all the different things that you can use to make your PowerPoint lively. The next thing I want to share with you is just about communicating your message. You want to use your hands, your body. You want to lean in sometimes to make a point. You might want to slow down and give a really good pause. Your body language is so very important because only 7% of what you give in a presentation is verbal. The other 93% is nonverbal. It may be your tone, how you speak, it's your pauses, it's not the words. So it's great to have the words down, but you definitely want to work on the pauses, on your tone of voice. We call it vocal variety. You don't want to be monotone and just talk like this. You want to have some times when you're really passionate, and then you want to have some times where you use that pause and you give your audience a moment to think about what you just said, especially when it's a very important part of your presentation. You also want to look at your rate of speaking. Sometimes I'm from the North, I get on a tangent and I speak too fast. I have to be aware of that. Yes, I'm from Tennessee now, but I'm originally from Michigan, and I lived there till I was 30. So I have that Michigan speak fast, get it done kind of thing, and then a little bit of y'all. So what is the greatest secret to giving a presentation? Now we see the lady that I had as Denise happy at a podium. What's the secret? Well, I'll tell you, it's easy. Practice, practice, practice. If you want to talk about building confidence, the most confident you can be is if you know your material. If you absolutely know what you're going to say without a hiccup, that doesn't mean you memorize it. It just means that it becomes personal to you. Those facts and figures, you may have to turn around and point to your screen, but all of that is building confidence in how you give the presentation, what information you go over, and the more you know your presentation, the better off you're going to be. The next thing is repetition, and I have some notes here on repetition. I don't know where, here they are, because I want to reference research study that is really important about repetition. There was a study done at Washington University in St. Louis by Dr. Pascal Michelin. He said, we all get better if we do it repeatedly, no matter what it is. He did research on taxi drivers and bus drivers in London. And what he found was the hippocampus, that's the posterior region of your brain that really has something to do with memory. In the taxi drivers, it was much larger and much more developed than in the bus route drivers. What's the difference? Those bus route drivers were on the same route every day without fail. I'm going down this street, I'm coming back up this street. This is my route every day without fail. I don't have to think about it. Taxi drivers, on the other hand, had to find out where to go in the city and discover different routes and know how to get around the traffic when something is keeping them from getting to point A to point B. They had a larger hippocampus because they had more memory stored from their experience. They also found in musicians that the gray matter was more pronounced in musicians who practiced at least an hour a day. It was more pronounced than those that were amateur musicians or non-musicians. They had that muscle memory that they were creating, and it gave them more gray matter. Michelin believes that studies like this apply to people who speak repeatedly on topics they are passionate about. The more you speak in public, he said, the more the actual structure of the brain changes. If you speak a lot in public, the language areas of the brain actually become more developed. So that repetition is really important. You want to practice in the mirror. You want to videotape yourself. Give your speech. I mean, we all have these great cell phones. Put it on a stand and give your speech. I sometimes give my speeches and then record them and let them play back when I'm in the car. It just drives home the information. So really quickly, this is my favorite quote. Don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. Very important. Now, you might ask, you're a public speaker, you've spoken at these conferences and things, why do you still go to Toastmasters? Well, I'm looking for the leadership skills too. And I'm developing the public speaking skills, but leadership skills are important to me. I have new challenges all the time in the Pathways program. I have continued growth with my public speaking. And let me tell you, we have community. These are just some pictures from some of the things that we've done. And the middle picture I find really interesting because my club is called the Bridgestone Babblers. And it is a club that is located in Bridgestone's national headquarters in downtown Nashville. They actually have a Formula One car in the lobby. So cool. And tires and everything else. But I thought that Formula One car is really cool. So I want to give you some resources. If you're interested in developing your public skills, your public speaking skills and your leadership skills, I encourage you to check out Toastmasters International, and that's the website. The Bridgestone Babblers meets every Thursday from 12 to 1 Central, and I would love to have you as a guest, just to check it out and see what it's about. But you can go to toastmasters.org and find a club in your area by just putting in, I think at the top it says find a club, and you put in your zip code, and you will be amazed at how many clubs are near you and the choices you have, whether to go at lunch, whether to go on a Saturday, whether they meet at night, whether they meet in person or they meet on Zoom. You'll have lots of choices. And I'm also giving you my email address. I love to mentor speakers. And that email address, I want you to use it. If you're giving a presentation, by all means, email me. I have my own Zoom account that I use to help people with their presentations. I will give you immediate feedback. And I'll be able to help you, I hope, make your presentation that much better. So please reach out to me if you have that. If you're giving a presentation, I'd love to help you. And now I'll turn it over. Have we had some questions in the chat?
We have not had any posted yet so far, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to put those in there, or go ahead and unmute yourself. But if there's any in the chat, I can help facilitate that.
Please just unmute and let's go for it. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you.
I'll start, Kelly. One of the challenges that I've run into when I am at an expo, maybe a senior expo, I've got a booth, and I need to do that quick introduction of myself, my company, and what we do is a lot of people are sort of taken aback initially to see a monument builder in a public space. And so I get an awful lot of objections right up front. Rather than hi, what do you do? I get more about, ooh, you do that. So would you have any pointers for me in that situation?
I don't know how you introduce yourself, but I think in that situation, rather than saying I'm part of monument builders, you might start with, I help people remember their loved ones forever. Something personal. I help people build a monument to someone they don't ever want to forget. This is what I do. And then you can talk about monument builders, but you pull them in with that first thing so that they're not like, ooh, cemeteries, you know, monuments. And I don't know, maybe you've done that. Have you done that? Have you tried that before?
Yeah, I mean, it can depend specifically on what they say, but I definitely do try to sort of turn it around and say something like, well, you know, I think that monuments are very important to, you know, for our loved ones to carry on that legacy, and so yeah, I've tried different sort of rebuttals to those objections, but
But
you
have
know.
you started with a very positive statement about what you do? Have you started with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. And that would just be your suggestion for any of us if you're in that situation, and it's yeah, just start with a
Find a great way, and like I said, get in front of the mirror and find a great way to introduce yourself without calling too much attention to the negative side of it. You see what I'm saying? And then when you have got yourself to where you're pretty comfortable with what you say, get in front of your family. Repetition is everything. Get in front of your friends. Find some other people in the organization that you maybe you can all meet together and work on your pitches and talk about how you want to go out in a setting like that and be able to share what you do. Anybody else? I just want to ask, and you can unmute and share, have you gotten any morsel of information today that's really helped you? I see some heads nodding. That's good. Sometimes it's hard to speak up on Zoom.
Well, I'll say so. My name's Craig, by the way. One thing I found helpful and true is how you said, "Don't be a reader."
Yes.
I've been in charge of training for cemeteries and funeral homes in the past on how to sell memorials and stuff. And a large granite company took over some big cemeteries here in southeast Michigan at one point a few years ago, and they came in to do the training. And he read from the PowerPoint presentation the entire thing.
Yep.
And so, of course, I know all of the counselors there, and they all told me he read from it. It was okay, blah blah blah. But we needed more, right? So
Mhm.
6 months later, he came back to do the same training to train them more, and he read again the same presentation he did 6 months earlier, and so they were lost in it. He had nothing to add, and so a big lesson was learned that day is to, for me anyways, as somebody who has ran conventions, emceed like Christina probably has, or Christine has, is to be prepared. It's it's a great way to lose the fear of have an agenda, but don't
Yep.
follow it to the key. Go off on it. I'm really good at going off on it. As anybody that knows me, I don't shut up. But yeah. But try to follow the agenda. Teach what you're there to teach and say what you're there to say, but do it in a not so formal way.
That's good because you can have the best PowerPoint in the world with the best pictures and the best transitions. But if all your information's up there, you're going to lose your audience. And they're not going to walk away from that and say, wow, that was a great training. They're going to walk away and say, can you give me the slide deck? Because I can read all this. I can retain it just by reading the slide deck. And you never want that. I hope it was interesting today to bring in points at a time. I don't like anybody to read ahead of what I'm saying. I want you to be right with me with each bullet point. And some people say that's too, I don't know, I've had some people say there's too much movement in your PowerPoints. Well, that's your opinion. And sometimes you have to go with what you feel comfortable with, not just what somebody else is comfortable with. Anybody else? Thank you for that, Craig. Well, I'm going to go back to, well, I've got one more slide. I just want to say thank you. I'm really glad to be here today. I look like I've stopped a little early, but that's timing, and that's something that you always have to work on. But my email address is there, and I sincerely want to help you. If you have something, if you want to run your pitches by me, I'm happy to do that. Like I said, I've got a Zoom account, and I help a lot of Toastmasters with their speeches. It's something I love to do. I love to share that and see somebody then give a speech, take some suggestions, and make it even more memorable. Anybody else? Crickets?
Good. I think you've given everybody a lot to think about. I think that there's a lot of different situations, available to us, whether it is at expos, chamber of commerce events, it as a vendor in or even at a sponsorship, that you maybe are part of in the community. And whether you need to do a presentation or an elevator pitch. I love that you just keep driving home to just be prepared, practice now when you don't need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they say elevator pitches should be 30 to 60 seconds, but in your situation where you are before, say, the Chamber of Commerce, and you have a lot of information to give, don't be afraid to go a little farther than that. Just make sure that you're not giving out so much information that they aren't engaged to ask you questions in return. I think the whole thing with an elevator pitch is you give them enough information for somebody to say, oh, wow, you're from Michigan? That's great. Where did you live? And you've got a conversation going. And one thing I didn't say, but I will say at the end here, is make it conversational. Make sure when you give a presentation or anything that you're really being conversational with the audience, just like you're having a conversation with somebody and you're sharing this information. It is so much better to do that or than to memorize and seem inauthentic, or to read off a script and have people, yeah, I read off something today, but I didn't read off much. And that was just something I wanted to get a quote right. So you can do that. But the elevator pitches are really important. And like I said, you can have as many elevator pitches as you need, that you need. You may need one for a conference. You may need one for the Chamber of Commerce. You may need one when you're a vendor. You need to have those prepared in advance. And then impromptu speaking isn't so scary because you've practiced. And practice is the key. And I can't say it enough. Don't practice till you get it right. Practice till you can't get it wrong.
I love it. Thank you so much,
You're
Kelley.
welcome.
Appreciate you being here. And everyone else, thank you so much for being here today. Please note that this webinar does count for 1 hour of CM credit. You can learn more about the Certified Memorialist program at monumentbuilders.org. Just click on About MBNA and select the Certified Memorialist program. If you're not already doing so, I would encourage you to find the WinMBNA Facebook group. Just request to join so that you can be the first to know about future WinMBNA programming. And again, thank you all so much for your participation. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.